Thomas here, and I want to tell you about a new pet that I picked up. It's right in my wheelhouse. It's an aquatic pet. It's lots of fun. It's funny enough, I went to my local fish store, which is One Fish, Two Fish in Dartmouth, to pick up some celestial pearl danios for a separate tank. While I was there, I saw this thing, and I was like, I've seen them before, and I just decided, you know what, I gotta grab one. They've been an interesting critter to me for a long time, and I figured now's the time. So I went home, I did a bunch of research, figured out what I needed to know exactly to keep one of these little guys happy and healthy. I went back to the store, I grabbed a pair of 10-gallon tanks. I only use one for this setup, but I'll explain the second 10-gallon later on. I also picked up a tube stand because it allows you to stack tanks, and a glass top, and the food that I was gonna need. So I got everything home. I wanted to put the 10-gallon right beside my desk where I work because I figured it'd be a great little place to be able to see this guy moving around and doing his thing. So I'm assuming it's a guy. I don't know. Could be female. I don't know how to tell these things with these animals. But anyways, got it beside the desk. Of course, with it flat against the wall like I had intended, the door was not going to close all the way. It was going to bang into the tank. And although the stand kind of prevented the handle from touching the tank, I didn't want to risk anything, especially because I have little kids. Last thing I need is them flying down there and swinging the door open or something. So I decided to move it so it's kind of like peninsula style coming off of the wall. So while I'm sitting at my desk and kind of working away over here, it's right there and I can see it's actually closer than if it were to be right up against the wall. So that worked really well. I threw my printer under the stand because I have nowhere else to keep the printer. It was literally on the floor where the tank is. So I went to that other room of mine that's full of aquatics nonsense that I brought with me from my move from Ontario, and I had an AquaClear mini filter, which I thought would be perfect for the 10-gallon. Took it into the maintenance room, got it spick and span, cleaned it up completely. Then I got the 10-gallon and gave it a good rinse, got it back on the stand, got the AquaClear onto the tank, got the glass top, opened that up, got that put together and onto the tank, and I dug through my stuff. I also found a Lifeguard Aquatics LED light. It's got actinics and I think like 10,000 K daylights that you can switch on independently, so I thought that was a good enough choice. It was nice and compact, it fit the tank, so I got that on there too. Now, I don't have a heater because this particular critter is cold water, but I did put a thermometer on the tank just so I could see what the temperature was. Because if it's not going to be perfect, then I have, oh, sorry, hold on. So if for whatever reason the temperature's not perfect, I have this awesome little Chill Solutions inline chiller, but it requires a pump. So if I'm going to use this, I would have to put a canister filter on the tank, which I may do eventually, but we'll talk more about that later. Now, this particular critter, from what I've read, it does really well on a bare bottom tank, although you can keep them on sand as well. But I decided to try to keep this the most basic version of the setup for this critter. I decided to go bare bottom. However, I didn't want the critter to be able to see through the bottom of the tank. Long story short, I didn't want that critter to feel like it was floating in space, and that could cause maybe some potential stress. So I got a piece of cardboard from the 10-gallons box that wrapped around it. I grabbed a black garbage bag. I tossed that cardboard in the garbage bag, tossed that cardboard and garbage bag under the tank. So from the top, you can't really see anything, but I'll show you that in a later clip. So next up, I filled up the tank with RDI, and then I took my fancy little critter and floated it in the tank in its bag. Now this is where things get interesting and a little bit scary for me. So I didn't realize, but I must have, in the process of packing everything up, or maybe in the process of everything shipping in the moving container from Ontario to Nova Scotia, my filter was damaged and it was leaking. And it was leaking quite a bit. Enough that I was kind of panicking a little bit. You know, this was the filter that I intended to use on the tank. I wasn't sure if I had another one or anything like that, or how extensive the damage was. So I ripped it off of the tank. I took a good look at it, and there is a massive crack up the side of the case for this AquaClear. Now, I could go out and buy another AquaClear case. I didn't know if anybody local had one. I didn't feel like calling anyone. I had a pet floating in a tank that needed a filter and no filter for it. So quick thinking on my feet, I took the filter, ripped everything apart, dried it up, and I grabbed some super glue and I started gluing up the inside of that crack on the inside of the filter, and hoping that that was going to be enough to plug it up. Now, I've done this in the past with smaller cracks, but this was a pretty big crack. I was lucky enough that was enough, and it worked. So I tested it by filling the filter back up, got the media back in there, and even though this was a brand new setup, I don't want you guys thinking I was being irresponsible. I had actually floated some extra media in one of my other filters so that it would be cultured with beneficial bacteria specifically for this tank when I was ready to throw it all together. So I grabbed that, dropped that in there too, and got the filter running. I reprimed it. And then once it was running full blast, I turned the flow right down because this particular critter doesn't like a ton of flow. In fact, it stresses them out quite a bit if there is a lot, which is one of the reasons I really wanted to use this filter and didn't want to try to use like my 2211 canister filter or anything like that. I wanted to make sure that I had some control, and it seemed to be the best option. So, thank my lucky stars, but the patch I did worked, and therefore, it was crisis averted. But I was panicking like large while it was happening. I also know that these little critters like to have a safe space or a tight space that they can kind of tuck themselves into if they're feeling a little too exposed. People often use caves and stuff. Keeping in the nature of this being a completely kind of dulled down setup, I did just a quick DIY PVC hide using a 1-inch elbow and a 1-inch piece of PVC in purple, and just used a heat gun and flanged the outside of it a little bit just so it'd be easy to get in and out. I have seen the little critter in and out of there periodically since I put it in, but really is not in there often. But I leave it in there just in case. Next up, I checked the temperatures once everything was kind of settled and running, and I was floating around 70 degrees. Not the worst. It's higher than I want it to be, but it's actually within range. So for now, I'm going to let it run until I've got a better idea of how I'd like to set up the filtration so that I can include that CSX C-1 chiller. So until further notice, 70 degrees it is. If it gets higher, I will do something sooner. But my basement's pretty chilly. Next up, I added some Replenish. Replenish is essentially just going to add some hardness to the RODI water because these critters prefer a, a moderately high carbonate hardness and general hardness. In particular, they like some calcium, magnesium, and carbonate hardness in that water for various reasons. I'm assuming biological function. So after letting it flow for a little bit, it was time to release said critter. And if you guys haven't guessed by now, or from the little teaser pics that have been popping up, it is an axolotl. I got an axolotl. They're beyond adorable. They're super cool. And let me tell you why I think axolotls are cool, why you see this clip of me releasing it into the aquarium. They are not only a creature which is essentially stuck, evolutionarily stuck in its nymph stage, and reaches sexual maturity in its nymph stage, and never grows up, for lack of a better term. It has insane regenerative properties. It can even completely heal and replace a portion of its brain if its brain gets damaged. If any portion of the axolotl is damaged, as long as its environment allows it to and it has the nutrition to do so, it will regenerate it. Any part, anything, an eye, an entire eye. That is just nuts. The other thing I think is really cool is that they're used in a lot of research because of that, because they're so interesting in their ability to regenerate. And because they're used in that research, they have been genetically modified, in this axolotl's instance, to have green fluorescing proteins in their body. So this axolotl is an albino, but on top of that, it literally glows under UV or actinic light, which I think is amazing. Now, it's just like a glowfish, where it's not dye-injected, it is literally born with this ability to glow. So if I were to breed this axolotl with another one that had this green fluorescing protein gene, I would get more axolotls with green fluorescing protein, which I think is just crazy. And I'll also say that any axolotl morph can carry the green fluorescing protein gene. So you could have a normal looking axolotl that carries the gene. You won't be able to see it very well unless there's a black light on it or UV light because the pigments of the axolotl kind of cover it up. You can get leucistics, which are very common. They have black eyes and are completely white. You get them with the green fluorescing protein gene. You have a bright kind of highlighter yellowish green axolotl with black eyes. Mine has reflective eyes and looks almost like some sort of evil spirit of an axolotl because it's albino, which is a yellowy color with then that green on top of it, which makes it even more like a highlighter color, which I think is awesome. So I'm sure you can see from the video clips on the bare bottom tank, there is a lot of what looks like leftover food. That is in fact poop. That is not food. The food I'm feeding right now is this stuff by Tropical. I picked it up at One Fish, Two Fish as well. Axolotl seems to love it. Mind you, I also have some frozen bloodworms just to keep things mixed up. I like to do a varied diet. But more importantly, those poops are everywhere. So the whole point of keeping them on bare bottom is it makes that poop very easy to get rid of because they take those poops often and they're large. So, you know, those poops are in the way, no big deal. You know why? Because you can just grab your siphon hose, drop it into the tank, do a quick little siphoning. It takes very little water in the tank, like less than an inch, and you can top that back up, and you've removed the poop from the system. So you really push off water changes by doing it in this way. You don't have to do them nearly as often. You keep the water very clean, which is optimal. Another thing is the only other safe or agreed upon safe substrates are either super fine sand, which can be a little bit more difficult to work with, or really large like river style stones. And that's because axolotls have a bad habit of sucking up their substrate while they're eating, and that can cause impaction internally, which can very severely injure or cripple the animal, and you don't want to do that. And just so you have a better idea of what I meant with the black garbage bag, this is what it looks like when you're looking top down on the tank. Because of the angle we view the tank at from the side, the bottom looks mirrored, but from the top you can see it actually just straight up looks like a garbage bag. But at least this way, when the axolotl's looking straight down, it's a dark surface and not just straight through to my printer underneath the tank. It feels like it floated in space. That can't be comfortable. I wouldn't be comfortable. I'm already uncomfortable just thinking about it. Well guys, I hope you're as excited as I am about this cute little critter. I'm really looking forward to kind of drilling down what I think the perfect axolotl setup is. Everything from lighting to filtration to the substrate, everything. So it's gonna be a journey, but more importantly, I need some help because I need a name for this little guy, and I've got, or girl, and I've got absolutely no idea what to call it. I don't normally name my aquatic pets. I usually reserve names for four-legged furry things, but I think it needs a name. I'm gonna go out and say it, it needs a name. So let me know what you think in the comments below. What should I name this axolotl? Maybe something to do with the fact that it glows? Maybe the fact that it can regenerate? And I don't know, I need your help. And also, if you have any questions or comments for me at all, drop those down there. I love chatting with you guys. It's a lot of fun for me. If you haven't already, please sub up to this channel. It is my personal channel, and this is where I get up to all my own personal nerdy projects around the hobby, whether it's aquatics or other pets. And I just love to have you along for the ride. So, thanks so much for watching, and have a wicked awesome day or evening, depending on what time it is that I actually release this and or you are watching it. Ta-ta, or ciao, or bye.